Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10 on the Twitter handle, and I'm joined by Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW, his Twitter handle. Welcome, and it's back to club football, Sean. Yes. And it's a semi-final. And it's a big one, not just for Celtic and Ange. It's a big one for yourself because you're covering a semi-final at Hampden for the first time ever, aren't you?
That's true, yes, aye.
Lovely.
I'll be there.
I hope you enjoy it. It should be. Now, here we go. Big game, Sean, for Ange and Celtic as well. You know, it's we did our teams line up, Sean, yesterday, and having not spoken to each other, remarkably, we both picked the same team. So, explain yourself, Sean. How did that come about?
I'm sure there's a phrase for that kind of thing. But, no, I think, to be honest, you maybe agree. It's maybe the same kind of thought process that there's no need to really change much. None of the international players have reported back injured. Stephen Welsh, obviously, me and Graham touched on it yesterday. He seems to be fine, even though he came off with a knock in the last 5 minutes for the under-21s. So, on the assumption that, as Ange said, Rogic and Starfelt is going to come too soon for them, there's no real reason to change any of the personnel, I would have said. The one thing that I did think, and I have gone for, and obviously you've gone for as well, is giving James Forrest this extra time to get himself, if not match fit, then certainly a better level of fitness. The two of us have both went for him to come in for Abada or wide on the right. That's, for me anyway, that's a mixture of the fact his experience at Hampden, his experience in general, and the fact that I still consider him the first choice right winger. It's just the fact that he's not been fit for a while. So it's not like he's going to be thrown back on having not been on the pitch either. He's been working his way towards it. Very well might be wrong, don't get me wrong. Ange might give Abada the nod because he's played him more often than not this season. But I've went for Forrest, you've went for Forrest, and I presume it's for much the same reasons. Very
much so. I think Forrest has got a track record of turning it on at Hampden. He's a big game player at Hampden, and I just think the wide open expanses of Hampden will suit Forrest, you know, and Jota, and I just think it will suit Celtic.
It will suit Celtic, aye.
You know, so the way Ange wants them to play. Frank Brennan comes in. Morning, Frank, how you doing? Regular contributor. It's not simply a case of getting into the League Cup final. It's a matter of winning it too, in order to tell our rivals and challengers that we're completely back to our trophy-winning ways. Have to agree with that completely, sure.
Aye, that's exactly what it's about for me. I think that's a fair point, Frank.
And you and boy Martin comes in. I'm feeling very confident about the game tomorrow. We're looking more and more like a well-drilled team who understand exactly what Ange wants. And he also comes back in and says the big pitch will suit us. Open up St Johnstone. I can see us winning by 3 or 4. Bold predictions there, Sean, about the margin of victory and stuff like that. You touched on it off air just before we come on, and you said that you were confident as such, and it's not a feeling that you like with Celtic at Hampden, because we've known before what can happen when you feel like that. Sometimes you get a wee belt in the mush. So we'll see how it goes. But I think they've got every reason to be optimistic, you know.
Aye, 8 games unbeaten. The Livingston draw, obviously the one you could argue major blip. The performance, as much as anything else, still won that game though. When you think about it, St Johnstone, I looked at them kind of in depth yesterday. They've not really enjoyed a great start of the season. Again, though, it's a cup game, and they will fancy their chances in it. There's no doubt about that. There's no getting away from that double cup win last year. That was massively impressive. It was historic. Not only for them, but in terms of Scottish football, for a club out with the Glasgow 2 to win both cups in the same season was historic. They've retained most of that squad. They've let go their captain, and their best midfielder's been poached, which is obviously a benefit for Celtic. But most of the team is still there. They're still set up in a similar way. You might find that compared to the game at Parkhead, on my birthday, actually, October 23rd, they will probably go a wee bit more offensive. I felt like they were sitting almost trying to do a Livy, maybe not to that extent, on that game. And you could argue for the first 20 minutes or so, it kind of looked like it was going to work. But as always with Celtic, once they make the breakthrough, you feel as if they could score a couple. they did that day, obviously, and there was also and I think somebody's touched on it, I'll not put it up, but they've touched on the fact that there's another familiar face that will be there on Saturday, which is Mr. Nick Walsh, who obviously infamously this season let Chris Kane away with, if not murder, then certainly some form of assault on Big Carter Vickers. So I think it will be, I don't think it will play out the same way as the game at Parkhead played out, but I think St Johnstone will set up in a similar shape, if not with similar intent. For
those of a certain vintage, sorry about the gremlins there, there's a wee bit of Norman Collier, if you remember Norman Collier, the comedian, Sean there, that's certainly nothing to do with what we're doing, but glad to have you back, Sean. We managed to piece together exactly what you were saying there. Yeah, more comments coming in. John Coyle comes in, we need to put down a marker. If we play to our best, then we win comfortably. Thanks for that, John. And Tim Anonymous comes in, 4-0 Celtic, a Kyogo hat-trick and Jota. Now, just reading these comments, Sean, there is an air of confidence about Celtic, and I expect that because they are playing well. They almost completed the perfect month there. But I'll add the caveat, and you were touched on it there, they are playing the League Cup holders. St Johnstone have been there and done it in the last few months. There's no substitute for that kind of experience, is there?
No, and perhaps crucially, but hopefully not terminally. Not, a lot of the Celtic players won't have. Some of them will be. We've obviously talked about Forrest. You've obviously got McGregor in there as well. But for the majority of the Celtic team, as well as they're playing, it will be the first taste of that kind of occasion. Not so for the St Johnstone team or the majority of the St Johnstone team. But I do agree with the majority of the comments there. I've got it spot on. The big pitch, an early goal, and you would fancy Celtic to score a couple. That said, I won't go to the extent of predicting 4-0 because a couple of times this season I've predicted big results and it's been either a draw or it's been a very, very antsy game. So,
and also that's the reason why James Forrest comes in for me. For that alone, he's been over the course and distance, and he's a serial trophy winner at Celtic. I just think that gets a nod over Abada because it's another person who has been there, done it, and got the t-shirt. So you need that experience in the team to maybe tell the other guys this is what it's all about. In my opinion, Ange might see it completely differently, but I just think you can't get enough of those guys in your team. The Celtic Supporters Podcast comes in and says, I think Celtic wants to park the bus much like Livingston at Parkhead. Are we worried Big Ange doesn't have a plan B in these type of games? Or do we blow them out of the water for Bertie? There's also that as well. David Bradley comes in. This is it, Tony, full steam ahead. We'll soon see. Ewan Boy Martin comes in. The simple truth is that if we turn up, we win. I'm like you, Sean. I agree with these comments. If Celtic turn up, I think they win. It's as simple as that. Because I don't see St Johnstone having much in their armoury to stop them.
No, and again, they've perhaps jinxing it here, but they've struggled to score goals, St Johnstone as well this season. Like really struggled. Chris Kane mentioned him there. He's the top scorer with 3 in 18 games. I think it's Ali Crawford and Murray Davidson have got 2, and then apart from that, nobody else has scored more than 1. They've generally struggled. They're key player, and we've touched on him before. Their key player to me, as much as it's odd to single out a goalkeeper as somebody's danger man, I think Xander Clark's performance will be key to their fortunes against Celtic tomorrow. How long they keep Celtic at bay will largely depend on how in form he is, because he's one of the standout keepers in the league.
Is that the same Xander Clark that we want to come in as a number 2 to Joe Hart, Sean? Martin, that same Xander Clark.
Same guy.
Before Rangers possibly sign him, that same Xander Clark.
That'll be the one. So it might have been odd to single him out as a key man, but I think he will be. I think for them he will be, certainly. The Celtic Supporters Podcast does make a good point that they probably will. As much as I say they won't approach it the same way, I think the opening 10-15 minutes they will approach it that way. I think they'll look. I'd be surprised, put it that way, I'd be surprised if they went for the goal right away. I think they'll concentrate on trying to get as far into the game to make Celtic antsy as possible. I don't necessarily think they'll sit as deep as Livingston, but they'll certainly have their 3 at the back, which will turn into a 5 when Celtic have got the ball, which will be the majority of the time, to be fair. But I do think you've got to remember it's a cup tie. They can't just play for a draw. I mean, you could go for penalties, but that's a dodgy situation to try and play through. So I think they will go for maybe the first 15-20 minutes, try and make sure it's 0-0, and then they might try and open up a wee bit. But again, this is where it comes back to all the comments. This is what you've said as well. The wide open pitch, the early goal, specifically the early goal. That's the same in every Celtic match this season. If Celtic get an early goal, you fancy them. It's if the game drags into the 70, 80 minutes without scoring, you would be thinking, oh, so that's still the key for me.
Timoron comes back in, make it the Bertie final and pummel St Johnstone. Obviously, the Celtics players are going to wear the number 10 on their shorts. It is going to be an emotional occasion. Frank Brennan comes in, absolutely hammering his big pitch, will completely suit Celtic. But for me, the facts are that nearly always we have to score that early first goal and the rest will follow. And then David Bradley comes in. Sean will see the best out of Abada at Hampden, the big park. Well, me and you put Abada on the bench, so that's and then Frank Brennan comes in. He's still reeling at my mention of Norman Collier and showing my age with that one. I'm a slightly 49, Frank. I know you'll find that hard to believe. Oil of Ole, Secret of Eternal Youth, from my mother told me. Yeah, there you go. For anyone out there that's wondering, he laughs.
On David's point, I actually think he has got a point. I think Abada would enjoy that big pitch, but he'll enjoy it whether he comes on as a super sub or whether he starts for me. So he would have the chance. I think he will get game time. You think of the wide positions, and this is where the Celtic Supporters podcast comment about the plan B comes in. For me is, all right, you could argue the Livy game right there again was one of them, but they did have the chances and they just didn't take them. The first game against Livy, that was still, I think, the most insipid performance that Celtic have put in this season. Didn't look really scoring. But for me, and I wrote it after the game, it was more that the lack of options from the bench to kind of reinvigorate his plan rather than actually change the plan was the problem. I think, despite the fact that Giakoumakis, as somebody pointed out on Twitter to us, is actually probably going to miss the game, the likes of Mikey Johnston on the bench, Abada if he is on the bench, or Forrest if he isn't, those are game-changing players that can come on. Yeah,
very much so. And Feed the Bear comes in every time. He just wants me to say it's going to be a rip-roaring, free-scoring, never boring Celtic 3-0. There you go, Feed the Bear. I said that. That's fine. John Coyle comes in. I agree with Sean. If we get an early goal, it could be a long game for St Johnstone. Be a fitting tribute to the brilliant Bertie Auld to win it and do it in style. Is that what you're talking about, John? To see Bertie and to see the Celtic team tomorrow entertain. That's what he said all the time. Go out and entertain. Tony, I would try and get Scales game time. Yeah, I don't think that's such a bad idea either. He'll maybe try that, but I think he'll maybe wait till if they are in a comfortable position in the game. I don't think he'll take any.
I agree with that. I don't see Scales coming in for a semi-final unless it was an injury crisis really at this point. Could potentially get him some game time if they're far enough up. Put that comment up that just came up. In my St Johnstone preview, I was looking at their danger men and stuff and the statistics and all that, and I renamed one of the sections, but can they play? And that was just a wee nod to Mr. Auld there. And if you're interested, it's on the site, but the answer ultimately was not in the way that you necessarily think statistically. I think everybody's got the impression because of the way that they won the two finals and the semi-final last year that they're all just long balls and crosses. Statistically, that's not the case this season. And as I say, they've been struggling to score goals as well. So there will be a threat, and they will fancy it on their kind of. I mean, they made it their trophy room the last few months, Hampden. And as I ended the article with, ultimately it's up to Celtic to make Hampden theirs again.
Yeah, and people know my thoughts on Bertie Auld. I also said on the other podcast that I put on that I would want Celtic to name the tunnel at Celtic Park after Bertie Auld and call it the 10:30 tunnel with those phrases. Can they play, entertain, welcome to paradise, the 10:30 tunnel? I'm trying to get Celtic to do that, Sean. I think that would be a most fitting tribute to a wonderful man. So we'll see what happens with that. But it would be a nice gesture, a nice touch. Celtic renamed the tunnel the 10:30 tunnel and had all those kind of phrases around the opening to the tunnel, I think. But yeah, I agree with you, Sean. That's my caveat, that you are playing the cup holders who will want to defend that trophy, and they will play whatever way they play, but they'll try and they'll try and frustrate Celtic, I think first and foremost. And and why wouldn't you? because if you go toe-to-toe with Celtic, they've shown on a number of occasions this season when teams go toe-to-toe with them that they can take them apart with the middle to front section that they have.
The one thing I'd be not confident, but I wouldn't necessarily be fearful if you're Celtic is that their forward players, they're not exactly, maybe Witherspoon aside, they're not exactly inspired creatively, if you know what I mean. They still are effective. They still can have an effect on that Celtic defence. As much as I said, and Celtic do still have the best defence in the country, you've got to remember domestically, statistically anyway. They've conceded, I think, 8 goals in the league. Half of them have been open play crosses. As much as I've just said that statistically St Johnstone actually aren't that kind of team necessarily, the way that the perception of them is because of the way they won their finals last year, they will still do that. They will look to exploit that. There's no doubt about it. They'll have Rooney running in at the back post. They'll have big Chris Kane up front. They will do that, and they'll have Witherspoon delivering if they get many corners. They'll have that delivery as well. They will look to exploit that when they get the chance. Despite what I've just said statistically about them, Callum Davidson, I'll be under no doubt that is the way to get at that Celtic defence, given statistically that's where they're weakest.
Sean, I always couch it by saying you have to earn the right to win football matches, regardless of form, regardless of confidence. You know, this is a one-off match to the victor, the spoils, and obviously the best team will win. So you have to go out there and perform. You have to turn up. You know, and this is a new experience for, as you've touched upon, a lot of the Celtic players, and a new experience for the manager. But you just hope that they all relish it, and I'm sure they will. But you know, this is not by any means a gimme. And 3-0 and 4-0's predictions are all very well, but you know, there's a game of football to be won, and you have to concentrate first and foremost on winning the game of football. 3-0, 4-0 would be great, but you win that football match because it's vitally important in the context of Celtic's season.
I agree with you. I think it's a massive match. There's no getting away from it. It is a gigantic match. Obviously, it's a semi. It's not the final. But as Frank started the show with the first comment, it's not about the semi in and of itself. It's about getting to that final and then winning the final, and that starts tomorrow. Yeah.
And Frank comes back in, accusing me of sounding a bit Bill Shankly with my Bertie Alls, that gravelly thing, frankly, you know, whatever. I probably morphed into both. Charlie McGarvey comes in and says, without getting carried away at all, what's the betting on the treble this season? Asking for a friend without getting carried away. Brilliant, Charlie. I do like the nature of that question. And Will McMillan comes in, we need to show we have the bottle. This is a new team. I agree with that. And David Bradley says a good win would put pressure on Rangers. Yep, very much so. I mean, I think everybody, there is an air of confidence there, Sean. Maybe not some saying a lot, some saying, you know, that quietly optimistic feeling that you think Celtic can win, you know, others just going for it and saying it's going to be 3-0, 4-0. We'll blow them away. But yeah, I mean, but it's a nice feeling to go into a match thinking like that. And as the old expression, it's no saying it, it's doing it, isn't it? You know, so
that's it.
You know, so they have to, you know, lots of people talking the talk. Celtic now have to walk the walk, and as you say, as Frank said at the top, lay down that marker and show that they can go to Hampden and win big games, and then show that they can go and win the silverware and win trophies.
I agree with you, and with that in mind, what's your score prediction, Tony?
My score prediction, I'll go with a conservative 2-0.
Oh, right, I'll go with a 1-0. I'm going to go very, very, very. I'll go that way because I'm hoping it's a reverse jinx. Because the last time, like a couple of games, as I say, I've predicted big results and it's not happened. So,
well, I'll say 2-0, but it won't surprise me if it increases the lead. You know, so. Rab McEwen, 2-0 to the boys, controlled the marker, laid down. Yep, Rab, I'm on board with that. John Coyle, no saying it, doing it, how to. Yep, indeed. Right. Just win Celtic and we're feeling good. I couldn't agree more. David Bradley. Feed the Bear comes in, 3-0. He's going for it. Kieran Nolan comes in, football shot Friday, get the hoops on. And John Coyle comes in and says 3-1 Celtic. So lots of opinions, Sean, but I think the the biggest opinion coming through is that there's an air of optimism and confidence about Celtic, and they believe that come 6:45 tomorrow night that they'll be in the League Cup final. Chas comes in, lots of optimism moment, but I'll take nothing for granted. However, I think the January transfer window surely achieving and could be pivotal in getting us across that line. Couldn't agree more, Chas. That's been a wonderful 20 minutes or so. Sean, quite upbeat. We're looking forward to it. To the victor, the spoils, as I say. Thanks, guys, for all your contribution via the comments.
Cheers.
And cheers, Sean, for your contribution as well. Always appreciate it.
Tony. Cheers.